All right, so welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's Tuesday, right? Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to part two of coding a SaaS application. In this webinar, we're going to talk about how to code a SaaS. And some notes before we start. All of this is being recorded. It will be posted to YouTube after. You will get emails to you get will get a link in your email to this recording. So don't worry about is it being recorded? Can I watch it later? You definitely can. Let's see. If you have any questions, there is a question box. Go ahead and type them in there, and we will be using that as kind of our question/chat box. So yeah, definitely post anything there. And I will definitely answer anything that I can't answer in stride at the end. We are going to do about 15 minutes at the end of questions. And if not answered there, we're going to do like a document of all the questions and then post that out later. I think that's going to be it for notes. Okay, so let's get started. This webinar is how to code a SaaS application. And I know a lot of us want to build our own businesses, start charging customers. I know that's kind of a candid way to put it, but that really is what it gets down to, right? Is to build a business, grow some revenue, provide value to our customers, and solve a problem. But as I started looking into how to code a SaaS a little bit more, I got into a lot of how the current ecosystem in the world right now is. We have so many great tools. Things are very different from what they were in coding from 10 years ago. We have a lot of really great products that we can use to build a SaaS application. And we're going to walk through that. Um, but one of the things that I learned is during all this research, it's okay, I need this, 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 and this, but there's already a lot of companies that provide this, 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 and this. So what I landed on is from how to code a SaaS to how to not code a SaaS. And that's kind of the theme for this webinar. It's still going to be a high level webinar. There is going to be a little bit of code, but we are going to follow through and go into multiple new webinars where we focus on specific parts of building a SaaS, because it's really too much to do in one 40-minute webinar. Hi, I'm Chris. I am Web Community Manager at DigitalOcean. I started a website called Scotch.io. We do JavaScript tutorials, and we joined up with the DigitalOcean family back in November of 2019. And you can find me on Twitter at ChrisOnCode. So really the question that a lot of us have is, when we're building a SaaS, what is the fastest way to get paying customers? And that's kind of what I wanted to explore in this webinar. Our agenda for today is I want to talk a little bit about Scotch and the progression that Scotch made, because that's the progression a lot of companies make, I think. The anatomy of a SaaS application. And I know I've been saying SaaS a lot, but I never actually talked about what it means. SaaS is a software as a service. I like to liken that to just any business that provides value online that people sign up for like a monthly subscription. And then an idea, like a high level coding idea for building out a JavaScript SaaS. I am pretty far into the JavaScript world nowadays. I'm very much more front end than I was before. I used to start on the back end more, a little bit of PHP. Scotch.io is built on PHP and Laravel, but now I'm doing a lot of JavaScript. So that's kind of where I'm leaning this webinar. If you're not a JavaScript dev, it's okay, because this is still pretty high level, so you can take a lot of it into your own languages and into your own projects. So the Scotch.io lifecycle. We started Scotch in 2013, me and my co-founder. It was a side project. We used it as a way to kind of use coding diary, I guess you could call it. We just, would learn a tutorial or do something in code and write it down. And then from there, we tried to provide value, which is content. And the cool thing is that users found our content valuable and they kept coming to the site and checking it out. So that's kind of the life cycle of Scotch, is, and all businesses really, is you start it, you provide value, and then you watch users come in. And if they like the value you provide, then they stick around. And if they don't, then they leave, right? But then the next step is once you have some users, once you have a little traction, you start to say, okay, let's try to monetize because we can't do all this for free. Or if you start a business as a paid for business, then you're already monetizing from the start. Then we analyze and grow, and then we go into, do we sell the company, get acquired, or do we continue doing what we're doing? So moving forward, I want to talk about building a SaaS, but before I talk about building the next business, I want to talk about the problems that we had with Scotch. And here are kind of my problems. We focused on quantity over quality for a second, where we said, hey, let's just do a ton of tutorials. Very much, I guess, SitePoint is very much like a lot of tutorials at one time sort of thing. We built our own CMS. I'm not a fan of building your own CMS. That thing is a tough thing to build and maintain. And we focused on performance. And I'll explain what that means. Focusing on performance is good, but it's not when it's taking away from your main value. So if we look at Scotch traffic over the last 5 years, we can see that a lot of this is providing value, getting customers, trying to do what's best for our customers, which is give them good content. And then right around here, I said, you know what, let's redesign the site a bunch and try to change out our architecture. We'll try to be faster, we'll be more performant, we'll be better. And then over here, I did another redesign, but you can see that content and traffic kind of went down because I stopped focusing on our value. So the main takeaway here, focus on your value. And that was my big lesson there, right? So here is what is the problem you're solving, right? That's how we provide values. We solve a real problem, usually solve the problem for yourself. So Scotch best features, we have content and design. And anything besides that, I really should not be focusing on because that's what was important to Scotch. So definitely ask yourself what's important to your business. All right, that's enough of Scotch. Let's talk SaaS. Uh, let's talk about building our own SaaS applications. This was the Scotch architecture. I think it's pretty similar to a lot of kind of starting up businesses and applications. You have an app server and a database server, or sometimes they're one server to start. You have your code, which comes from GitHub or Bitbucket or GitLab, or wherever you want to put your code. That's all fine. And then you have like some sort of networking layer, which I love Cloudflare, so we use Cloudflare. And then you finally get to your customers on the right, which is me drinking more coffee. So in your app server, you can choose your language, right? PHP, Ruby, Go, or JavaScript. And this decision on its own is a lot to ask. Uh, Mostly, you want to stick to what's best for your team. There are questions going on of, hey, what kind of choices should I make for framework, for language? What should I learn for 2020? If you know something, then go with it, right? If we had started Scotch in 2013, Ruby was on the up and come back then. And if I had said, okay, well, I'm going to drop all my PHP knowledge, learn Ruby, then it would have taken at least another year for Scotch to get started. So just go with what you know, go with what your team knows. You want to ship products faster. And that's the takeaway of this is we want to get to our customers faster. So that's our app server. In our database server, we can do MySQL, Postgres, MongoDB, all that good stuff. We're doing MySQL for Scotch because that's kind of the first one we reached for. Yeah. So core decisions when you're building a SaaS. Now we're going to get into the building of a SaaS section. And a lot of this is going to choose on your language. Your language is going to influence a lot of what you do next. Your database is going to influence how your language connects to your content. Where to store code. This is kind of an easy one. It's either GitHub or Bitbucket, or you can roll your own local one and install something yourself. Where to host your app is another one. We're at DigitalOcean webinar, so that's kind of a good place to do. But there's a lot of different options, and you can pick what's best for you and your team. But if you're starting an app and a business, you probably want whatever's quickest, because most likely you are going to change it in the future as your app grows. The view layer, the front end side of things, I'm a JavaScript person right now, so React is what I lean. Vue is also a great choice. New kid on the block, Svelte is a lot of fun to look at. And then you have your API. These are like core decisions that you're going to make for every single application that you build. So the takeaway here is pick what you're comfortable with, pick what gets you to ship the fastest. And for me, back then, it was PHP Laravel. It was hosting on DigitalOcean. It was just using GitHub. Nowadays, it would be just using GitHub again, probably doing a little bit of JAMstack stuff, React, Gatsby, and doing all that good stuff. And we'll talk about that in a second. So really, when we have a database server, we have our app server, and we have our customers. Does our customer really care what's in our black box of our application? I don't think they do, even though some applications perform a little bit better than some. Uh, Overall, they just care that your main core value is going to give them what they came for, right? So if we go back to core decisions, we have language, database, where to store code, where to host your app, your view layer, API, networking, CDN, CMS, forms. Um, that's kind of core decisions. I know I'm adding a lot more, but now we start to get to a point where, okay, if we wanted to build a SaaS in 2020, there's still a lot of stuff that our applications need for our users to be happy, right? So, um, and this isn't all of it. We have extra functionality that we need to add on: authentication, uh, payments, e-commerce, search, and emails, like transactional emails. If you say, hey, thanks for creating an account, or hey, you've been a member for a month. So these checkboxes, and that's what these little circles are starting to add up considerably. And the crazy thing is we haven't even talked about what makes our SaaS unique, really. A lot of that is going to happen on your functionality side of things, your app server, pretty much. But now we're on to growing and maintaining, which building a SaaS is one thing, growing and maintaining, grabbing new users, marketing to them, ads, that's a whole other world. And we'll probably do another webinar on that. But analytics, customer feedback, ads, emails, and marketing, all of that stuff is extra stuff that a business needs. And that's why you start to see businesses grow in number of employees, because of every single one of these is a deep dive, a little rabbit hole on its own. And that was fun. We built Scotch, since it was just two of us, we had to learn every single one of these rabbit holes. And that's kind of what took so long to build. But if you can learn all of these things, I think it's a great tool and mindset to have for growing a SaaS. Okay, so let's talk about our little black box where we have all of our stuff. And you can think of the black box as stuff that we build ourselves, stuff that our company builds if we want to build a brand new SaaS. And still, our customers are oblivious to anything that we're doing on the back end, right? So we have networking, forms, and I'm just going to click through these because there's a lot of stuff we have to build. Oh, well, I missed one. Hold on. I'm just doing this because I'm really proud of this animation. So we have all the stuff that we have to build in our little black box: e-commerce, networking, database, payments. What if, when we're building a SaaS in 2020, I want to say this is how building a SaaS looked like in 2005, right? Is there's a lot of stuff we had to build ourselves. And if we're trying to build a company in 2020, a lot of this stuff can be pulled out and given to an outsourced company, like right here, right? Authentication, networking, payment, search forms, e-commerce, email, CDN, all of that stuff can be outsourced right now. There's a lot of companies, and we'll talk about a few of those companies that you can go grab stuff from. But now look at the stuff that we have to focus on. We have our app stuff, which is kind of where our main value lives. We have our API, our CMS, database, and our view layer. The view layer is pretty much the thing that our customers are going to uh, interact with on a daily basis. So that's probably where we should put a lot of our focus. And then our app stuff is where we put a lot of our functionality for what makes us unique. So we should probably focus on that as well. But if we're building a SaaS in 2020, there's a lot of tools out there. What if we could outsource everything except the view layer? What if we could outsource everything but the view layer? App stuff, API, database all get outsourced as well. And I know that's kind of a lot of us really like doing that kind of stuff, but just a thought, especially in the age of 2020 coding, is there's a lot of outsourcing happening. So let's just focus on the view layer. Then at the end of the day, our customers still don't really care how much of it we outsourced. They really care about our view layer and our functionality that we provide. So let's move forward. What do our customers really care about? That's the question you have to ask yourself when you're building your SaaS application. And I know this part still kind of gets into the uh, conceptual part of building a SaaS application. But if we have core decisions and we don't have to worry about any of that stuff, then we can just worry about the view layer. And that's where our focus lies. And that would be amazing because now all of our stuff we don't have to worry about. We don't have to code up our own connections to our database. We don't have to create our own APIs and deploy those. So let's see how we can move a little bit further and build more of our SaaS without building our SaaS. And I hope nobody's getting mad at me because I'm not really coding a SaaS. I'm kind of outsourcing a SaaS. But we will get a little code in at the end, and then we will, like I said, break out into multiple webinars that actually focus on parts of the code. All right. So one question I want to answer before we move on is a question: outsourcing all of these core decisions, would it increase the initial cost of the SaaS application? It could. It absolutely could. And again, it depends, right? It depends on the choices that you make. And I'll go through some choices in the next few slides of a few of these. But at the end of the day, what I also want you to factor in as cost is cost of engineering and cost of maintaining the code that you have written. So you could pay yourself or pay an engineer to build out a lot of this stuff over the next 6 months. Or you could pay, I don't know, $30, $100 for each one of these, which it's not really each one of these, it's some of them. Some of them have pretty generous free tiers while you're testing out your SaaS. You could pay that out upfront, maybe like a couple $1,000s, and save yourself the 6 months, and then you can easily test your application. You can test your value. Do consumers actually sign up? Are they interested in what you're selling? And there's a slide later on, but I'll say it now, is if your SaaS does not do well and it bombs, which sad to say it happens, at least you didn't spend, a year and a half coding it before you tested the idea. You can quickly get a MVP up, a minimum viable product up, test it out now, and pay a little bit up front, but you save the time. And time is kind of where I put a lot of value. So if we focus on the view layer, right, and this is the view layer I'm considering, I keep clicking, sorry. The view layer I consider is anything that our customers see. So the view layer, I could have just said like the front end. That actually makes more sense. But the view layer is like if you wanted to use React to generate your front end, or Gatsby or Next or Vue or any of those JavaScript ones, it's all good, whichever you choose for your team. You could also create the view layer from your server side, which is what Scotch does, where we have Laravel and PHP generate the UI. But at the end of the day, this is the main part that your customers will consume your product through. So that's kind of where I think a lot of the focus should go. UX and UI is so different. Like some of us have a preference on Uber or Lyft just based on their UI, right? And I could go on and on about different products in which you have a preference for based on their view layer. So if we go into authentication, we have tools like Auth0, we have tools like Netlify Identity, and we have Okta. So these are 3 companies that you can just go in, sign in, and immediately have authentication done for your application. And let me show you how it works with Auth0. This is a very simplified version. And this is kind of where I said we're getting into a little code. But check it out. We have auth0.login with popup. We just import their JavaScript. And I'm leaning JavaScript right now, but they also have connectors and libraries for Ruby, PHP, any language out there they have. Same with Okta. And just with these, I don't want to say 4 lines because 2 are comments, but with these 2 lines, we're able to log a user in. We didn't have to create a node, any backend or API or handle any web tokens or JSON web tokens. We don't care about authentication. Our users don't really care about how our authentication looks or works. They just care that they can log in and get their data. So just like that, yeah, maybe we pay them a little bit up front. I think they have a developer plan for a good amount free. But yeah, just like that, we have authentication, right? We didn't have to, I rolled my own for Scotch and I made my own with Laravel, and that took some time and maintenance. So if we talk about payments, we have Stripe, which is the uh, kind of behemoth, I want to say. They're awesome. Love Stripe, love their documentation. Braintree is owned by PayPal, and they also have a good way to add payments. It's good to add PayPal because a lot of the world doesn't really use just credit cards. A lot of the world uses PayPal. And if you want to take it a step further, there's tools like Paddle, where they take it further from just the payment processor. They give you more of a UI to build out your payments. So you could have done this yourself. You could have rolled your own. You could use Stripe and build out all of that, or you could just use something like Paddle. And there's other companies that do the similar things. And if we want to charge a customer, we do paddle.checkout, and then you just say what product number that you're charging them for. Or if you do like a subscription, Paddle will do a subscription as well. I want to take a step back for a second. I see a question. My hesitation when outsourcing is that you lose control of the application. I don't know why it keeps clicking. So my answer to that is you could, right? It depends. I'll try not to say that for the rest of the webinar. It depends. But could you lose control of your application? Yes, you could. There are problems where, the company that you outsource to, maybe they change their APIs and now you have to do a little maintenance. But this paddle.checkout.open, and I'm not really 100% promoting Paddle or anything. They're not sponsoring or anything, but you could write the Stripe integrations. You could write the Node or PHP backend to handle all this stuff, and then you would have control over your application. But I want to iterate. I wish I had the number and a link to it, but I've heard that for everything you build, factor in 4 times that cost to build it. 4 times that cost is to maintain it, and same with time. The time it takes you to build is going to take 4 times the amount of time to maintain it. So yes, you lose a little control, but if payments and authentication is not your core value to your customers, I think it's fine to lose control in that regard. And then you hold on tight to what you provide value for, right? Question here, are there security concerns for third-party authentication? I would rather have a company that is, and I could be wrong, right? Like you could disagree and is totally fine. I would rather have a company that their main job is to do authentication and they are tried and tested by many, many people. I would rather let them handle authentication and tell me the right way to do it rather than me roll my own and hope it's the right way. And I know that authentication, the world of auth has changed a little bit in the last 10 years. They said you could store JSON web tokens in local storage, and now you shouldn't. So I think the Scotch one still does. So I'm not up to date with what's changing in authentication, right? But it's their job to do it. So that's maintenance I don't really want to do. And they're probably more secure than me. Let's see. Giving access to company data can't affect your business. It can. I mean, there's a lot of legal. I keep clicking. Sorry. There's a lot of legal stuff that happens with certain types of businesses. Um, a lot of these payment companies, especially Stripe and Braintree, are really good at keeping privacy utmost important, and that's their job, right? Like they're tried and tested by uh, all of these companies for their payments. I would say as long as you segment the important parts to the right outsourced companies, like Stripe, you can store the last 4 digits of a credit card in your database. But if I'm logging in with, if I have Stripe and I also have like, what's one of the other things we're about to talk about? I'm losing. Um, let's say we have a different company we outsource something to. It wouldn't make sense for us to give that 4 credit card numbers to that other company, right? So it's up to you and your team to make sure that everything is siloed correctly. All right, let's see. Laravel has some projects like Cashier, Nova, Spark. So if the framework you choose has a lot of this stuff built in, should you use that or should you outsource to another company? I think that a lot of the Laravel things that they provide are fantastic. I think they're pretty much the same as outsourcing to a company. So if it's built into your framework and your tool set, use it. I think it's great. And just know that there's going to be a little bit more maintenance and a little bit more code involved with that. And if you're okay with that, then I think it's a good option. Just to reiterate, this is being recorded. This will be on YouTube, and you will get an email to the link on YouTube. So if you have to leave, you're all good. We'll get you a link. Um, let's see. So I'm seeing a lot of these questions are pretty much outsourcing. Is is the data going to be a problem, or is outsourcing going to make you lose control of your application? And the question is, or the answer is, it could, right? Like it all depends on your application. If you and your core value, like we're gonna try to talk about a little bit of building an app in a second, and I don't really know what we're gonna build yet. I'm kind of just freestyling it. But if we do something like a beekeeping app, and I know I just threw that out there, but if we do something like that, like a CRUD application, our UI is what matters for payments and for authentication. I don't think it's like I would rather just outsource it personally, but yes, there are implications for like privacy policies and all that good stuff. That's something to look at in when you're building these things. Um, yeah. So yeah, let me move forward. We're gonna save a list. If you have more questions, keep adding them. This is great. I love it. We're going payments, and we have headless CMSs. We have WordPress.com, which traditionally was a pretty monolithic CMS, but you can use it as an API now. And we'll talk about what a headless CMS is. Strappy is a cool one, and Prismic is a hosted one where you can go grab. So CMS is traditionally one of the things where you have yourself and your team adding in content from maybe a website or a store. Shopify has a great CMS where you can add products. A headless CMS is one where you separate the view layer from the CMS. So Shopify will display the product for you. They'll build the views. A headless CMS just does the backend UI, and it just gives you an API for all your data. And we'll talk more about that. This is kind of more one of the more recent developments. Emails is another thing you have to deal with. Mailgun and Postmark are two great ones. I have tried to roll my own email server, and I did not enjoy it. So this is one I would definitely outsource. Your mileage may vary if you've done it before and you found it easy. So there's the other ones, right? Like customer service, you have intercom.io who handles a lot of the chat boxes you'll see across the web. You have GetForm, which can do forms for you. All you need to do is go create the form through them and then just get them the action, point your form to their URL they give you, and they'll give you a whole database of form submissions and all that good stuff. So that's kind of an interesting one. I haven't really used any form. I haven't really outsourced forms myself, but a good one to have if you're not trying to build out all your forms. Cloudflare, really great tool for networking, CDN. We use it on Scotch. Snipcart for getting more of a UI around your shopping cart is a little bit more than Paddle and Stripe and Braintree that we talked about. Fathom Analytics is kind of a Google Analytics alternative. So there's like no shortage of companies out there that are trying to solve one part of your SaaS application. So here we have authentication, payments, e-commerce, search, emails for transactional, emails for marketing, ads, customer feedback, analytics. Wouldn't it be great if all of that could be done for us and it would only take us like a month to integrate all that into our SaaS? And this is kind of the takeaway I want is we could hire our own developers to do all this stuff for us and it would do it in-house and we would feel like we had control, full control over the app. But we have whole teams of developers at Stripe, at Braintree, and at Auth0 and Okta, and they're these people that are paid a lot of money, and they're pretty much writing code for us if you want to think of it a certain way. So I know this was how to code a SaaS. I know we're doing how to not code a SaaS right now, but I think this is all important because it leads into coding your SaaS. You have to determine what you want to code and what you don't want to code before you can code your SaaS, I guess. So how do I build a SaaS in 2020 in JavaScript? Because that's what I'm familiar with right now. Your mileage may change based on what you need. We have a Headless CMS, which is our database, our app, and our API. And our front end, which is kind of where I want to put my focus. I think that having a nice front end is going to change how users subscribe and sign up, right? So having a headless CMS is going to take care of database, app, and API for us, and we'll have one right here. We're going to talk about one, and I'll show you a cool one that I like. And then we'll use Gatsby for building the front end, which is a way to get data from this API right here and push it into a front end that users will see. So this is kind of the JAMstack architecture. If you're not familiar with the JAMstack, it's a JavaScript front end kind of mentality where J is JavaScript, A is APIs, and you kind of saw it where we outsourced everything. Everything is coming from an API pretty much. And markup, we're serving static content to our users because that is going to be fast and secure. We did a previous webinar on the JAMstack. We can send you a link to that as well. So here's a headless CMS. We're going to use one called Strappy, which is I'm really liking lately. And we'll use Gatsby to pull in the front end. So we're kind of getting a little more of the actual practice and coding part. So we have a headless CMS, which is Strappy, Gatsby into our front end. So if we wanted to show off Strappy and not build our own backend, we can just roll Strappy as our backend. We have one-click DigitalOcean apps, and you can find them at marketplace.digitalocean.com. So basically what I'm saying is that I have installed Strappy here, and let me go grab a link. How do I get out of my presentation? But Strappy is the headless CMS, takes care of our language, takes care of our database. Where we're hosting our app is on DigitalOcean, takes care of our API, takes care of networking, a little bit of it, and our CMS. All of that stuff is also checked off. So we're starting to check off all these boxes on building a SaaS application. And then we can focus on our view layer, which is like Next.js. I'm just doing React ones because I know React. Next.js is built on React and Gatsby. So let me show you off a little bit of, how do I exit out of this? Okay, hold on, 2 seconds, 2 seconds. Okay, so I am going to show you all a Strappy backend. And yeah, I know this is how to code your how to code your SaaS, and this is more how to not code your SaaS. But um, I'm gonna send you a link here, and I'm just gonna destroy this server after this webinar. So my username is Chris, and my password is password. If you want to log in and mess around, don't. But here we have our Strappy backend, and check this out. If I wanted to do that early idea of bees, right? We can create a content type where we can call it bees. And what I'm doing here is I'm basically generating my schema and my database all from a UI. And I know I actually did not like this idea before because I worked in Laravel and I did my own migrations. I did my own database stuff, made my eloquent models so that we could, my ORM models, I guess. So I was not a big fan of a UI generated database, but here we go. Bees is my UUID. I'm going to say text. We're going to have the name of the bee. How much time do we have left? Cool. So we have the name of the bee. We'll add another field. Let's say we have the bee's email. I don't know. Bees have email now. We'll add another field. We'll say the number stripes. We'll just do an integer. They can't have more than a billion stripes, right? So there, let's do a Boolean for, I don't know, queen bee, or I guess is queen is a good way to name that. Um, well, I don't know what that one is. So is queen? Okay, no spaces allowed. Fine. I guess I shouldn't be doing caps then, huh? Okay, so try that. A little weird, but it'll work. So now we have built out our model, which is bees. Strappy will handle the connection to the database just fine. And we don't have to actually code out our, let's save that. It'll restart Strappy. Somebody made aliens. I love it. So we have aliens and we have users and bees. So if we create a bee, we have our CMS already built for us. I built one custom for Scotch, which took a lot of time. But here, Strappy gave us one in 5 seconds. So name of this bee, I'm going to name him Chris. Chris, let's do my DigitalOcean email. And stripes, I have 5 stripes. Is the queen. I am not the queen bee. We'll save. And now we have this right here. Now check out this cool part is we can actually go to our IP address /bees and look, it's forbidden. I know why. Oh, now we're here. Okay, let's go back to our, oh, did somebody break our, what did you all do? Hold on. Golly, I shouldn't have given out passwords, huh? Well, fine. I guess, well, okay, well, now we're stuck. But what I could have shown you was that if you go to /bees, you get an API right out of the box. You can actually go to /GraphQL as well. Does this work? No, everything's broken. Good job, whoever that was. But, or bad job. That was terrible. Bad. So let's go back to our slides. We'll play again. Okay, so we have all 3 of those. Let's see. Let's look at some questions again. Is this something you recommend over WordPress and custom post types? I recommend it as a different option, but I would say look at both, experiment with both, and see what your team likes. If you have people that are not developers, you probably want them in the WordPress dashboard because it's a little bit more battle tested, I guess. What's the difference between a headless CMS like Strappy and Firebase? So a headless CMS will actually give you the UI to create content, and it will give you the API. So Firebase, I know it gives you like a developer's UI, but if we have people on our team that are not developers, I don't know if I'd throw them into the Firebase dashboard. I think you would still have to build some sort of UI for non-developers to use. All right. Thank you for the words of encouragement in our questions. Turn it off and turn it on again. I'm just going to destroy it and walk away. How can you manage access control with these models? If our Strapi server didn't just implode, I would have gone to the Strapi settings where you can handle all of the authentication and authorization in there. What about Firebase? I love Firebase. I think it's a great option. If you want a different option that's similar and more GraphQL based, is Hasura is a great option. Ooh, Strapi's online now, is it? No, it's not online. Who said that? Okay, that's fine. Where are my slides now? Okay. Let's see. Where does Strapi store your database? It stores it in a DigitalOcean database. Strapi can give us a REST API or a GraphQL API. And the thing is, I'm not trying to say let's focus on Strapi. I'm saying any headless CMS can give you all of these tools as far as UI. It'll handle the database for you, and it will handle creating your custom types, and then it will give you an API. A lot of that is something that I had to build with Laravel by hand before, and that's kind of stuff that you just get out of the box in 2020. So am I saying use that 100%? No, I'm saying maybe look at it instead of building your own. And then there's questions on, is something a headless CMS? Basically, if it gives you an API so that you can consume that data, then yes, it is a headless CMS. So if we're using something like Gatsby to generate our website, this is how you tell Gatsby to go look at Strapi and pull data from Strapi. I should update that API URL, but that's okay. You can tell it what content types, and Gatsby will go ahead and auto pull all of that information from Strapi. And then you can use GraphQL if you want. Hey, here's all Strapi article. That would be all Strapi B if we were doing it. And I only have like 2 more minutes, but the gist of this is that figure out what you should not code as your SaaS, and then figure out what you should code as your SaaS. Figure out what your real value is, and then do that. Because if my SaaS flops, at least I didn't write my own CMS, or I didn't spend like a year and a half building something, right? I didn't use all of my time to do something that customers don't really see or care about. So summary, outsource things that don't matter, focus on your core value proposition. That's kind of the outset of what I wanted to talk about in how to code a SaaS, is how to not code a SaaS. And I know that's kind of cheating, but there's a lot of lessons in here that I learned from building Scotch and growing that business. So the last slide, creating a SaaS is easier in 2020, but you have to choose to make it easier. So you have to determine what to outsource for you and your team. And yeah, so I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. That's easier if you don't have to write your own CMS or your own authentication. But yeah, just determine what's good for your team. And I hope this was helpful. And we're right at 10:45, so this might be the first time I've ever ended perfectly on time. So we're gonna do 15 minutes of questions, throw them in the questions, and I'll like scroll through them, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for joining.
Thanks so much, Chris. You have so many questions about outsourcing in general. Everybody wants to know all these decisions. Wouldn't that increase the initial cost of the SaaS?
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think that I would be personally okay trading money upfront for time spent developing something that could have been paid for immediately. And it depends on the price, right? Like if we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, and yeah, maybe it makes sense to build it ourselves. But if we're talking about, Auth0 and Okta have really good developer plans for testing out SaaS. If it's like $30 a month, I think that's a good thing to use if you want to test out. Ultimately, you want to get to a point where you can say, hey, customers, do you think I provide enough value and would you pay for this? And I think we should try to get to that point as fast as possible. So I say trading money for a little bit of time is a good trade-off, but
If
it
you
could be
have
different
to,
for you.
if you have to assign a percentage to the amount of outsourcing in an average SaaS app, what would it be?
Okay, so there's two questions here. Would you, if we just listed out the number of things that a SaaS needed, just like we did with our little checkboxes, the number of things outsourced, if you're just looking at it as a list, 80%. But if you're looking at it as where you want to put your value, I would say the value of your application, it flips. 80% of your value is in the thing that you code. That one thing that you code up is the value. Everything else is not important, so I would put them lower on the importance list. So that's kind of, I would lean more to that latter explanation.
All right, last question on outsourcing. Some folks are quite worried about when you depend on another party for your business. If they end or cancel your contract, then you're done. What would you say to those worries?
I think it's a valid worry. I definitely think it is. I would say um, you have to put a little bit of faith in how long a company has been around and their kind of pedigree. If you look at Stripe, right, like there's a lot of companies on Stripe right now. A lot of companies that use their uh, hardware checkout in store themselves. Is Stripe going to go out of business in the next week? Maybe. I don't know their internals, but or if they're public, I don't know. But there's a certain amount of faith that you put into these larger things that you can outsource to, and for me, I would feel safe doing it. It depends on how you feel about that. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on if it's a smaller company, maybe it's a little more risk. If they're a brand new company, definitely more risk. But for the larger ones that have been around a while, I would be okay trusting them. Um, Question I see right here: as a single developer without a team, what path would you recommend? Is I would definitely try to outsource as much as possible. I know we have a focus on the outsource side of things, right? And I guess I should have put more focus on the other side in this webinar. But I don't want to focus on the things that are outsourced. I want to focus on the things that you're going to build and the things that you will use to provide value. Like how cool your UI is going to be or how useful your customers are going to find your product. Put the focus on that, not what's being outsourced, because at the end of the day, I don't know if something is using Stripe or if they rolled their own or if they're using Braintree. As a customer, it doesn't really matter to me. Headless CMS is free or paid. Some have generous free tiers. Most of them have good free tiers. Some of them are paid. It depends. The cool thing about Strappy is you install it on your own servers, which in this case, we did it with a DigitalOcean server. And I'll show you real quick how that kind of works. The webinar page, let's go DigitalOcean, one-click Strappy. Right, so you go here, you just create Strappy Droplet from our marketplace app and log in, and that will spin up a brand new droplet for you. Close that. This will do a thing. Okay, so we're installing Strappy here. You can pick your price of your server. So if you don't want to pay too much to like a headless CMS that's hosted on somebody else's stuff, you could just do like $10, and you can go down here. I'll add my SSH keys in, and then I'll just click create. And now we have a brand new Strappy droplet, which somebody in here is maybe going to destroy again, but that's fine. SaaS for small businesses. I think I need a little more info on that. I think SaaS, that model is great for any size business. Let's see. If you use Strappy, are you locked in? The cool thing about Strappy is that it's on your servers, so you could just go into the database and rip all that data out and migrate it wherever you want. And I'm pretty sure Strappy has an export button somewhere. And all headless CMSs, they should have an export button. And if they don't, I don't know if I'd use them.
Hey, Chris, switching gears for a bit. Would you launch in market with a buggy app, or would you debug it for another 6 months before launch?
Could you say that one more time?
Yeah, would you launch in market with a buggy app, or would you spend 6 months debugging it before launch?
So this is my philosophy, and I'm a big fan of launching often, and even if it's a little buggy, like I would say core value, make sure that's pretty solid. But if you have like little bugs here and there on things that aren't your core value, launch it, because your customers are going to be one of the best support staff that you could ever have, right? And there's a lot of benefits to launching early. Is one, you can validate your idea quicker. Is one story I really like to tell is Buffer, the social sharing product. They had a form on their website where it said, "Hey, do you like Buffer? Subscribe and pay now." And as soon as you clicked pay now, they took your credit card info, and this form didn't do anything. But as soon as you put in your credit card info and you pressed enter, it said, "Hey, we're not ready yet, but we have your email. Thanks so much for supporting us at this early stage." So to them, they said, "Okay, well, we have a good idea if people are willing to pay us now." And that's validation for their idea, right? So I'm a big fan of launch early, get feedback, and iterate quickly. Let's see our Strappy right here. Copy, paste that. If I get in for, or unless one of you got in already, or it's still spinning up, I'm not sure. We'll see. Let's see. Does Strappy handle relationships? Yes, it does. Most good headless CMSs will handle relationships and also give you all that back to you in your API. Here we go. A little slow. Let's go create the first admin. Don't know. That one's weird. Okay. Don't know what's going on here. But let's get some more questions. Okay.
I have one for you, Chris. Do
Sure.
you think that social login like Facebook or GitHub or others are better for authentication than email authentication?
So that's an interesting one. I think it depends on your app. I think it is not a bad idea to give users a few options. I definitely think you will get more users if you use one of the social logins. We added Facebook login and Twitter login to Scotch, and our signups went like 5x overnight, which is kind of fun. But the thing with that is, I don't know if many of them are going to be as qualified users for, like, if somebody wants into your app and they're doing email and password, they really want into your app versus, let me just click this one Facebook button, right? So it depends. Like, it doesn't hurt to have them all, not all, but a few. I guess advice on that would be try adding it and then evaluating if like that type of customer, how they use your app is worth it for you. Can I recommend SaaS solutions for ads? AdSense does a great job from Google. I think that's kind of like the big one. Another really cool one is, let me try to remember this one. Yep. So CodeFund.io is a really cool one. They are fans of ethical advertising, so they don't put any trackers on. And since there's no trackers, the ads aren't always 100% relevant to that user, but it's far more privacy secure. And I personally like that. Let's see. Can Strapi be used for an e-commerce site? Yes, it can. You just build out your model types in Strapi, and then you can use that API. There's also other SaaS options using SaaSes to build a SaaS. There's also other options you can use for e-commerce that are probably more directed at e-commerce. Snipcart might be one of them. Paddle also is good. I guess Paddle's not a CMS. It's just payments. Yeah, I would say just take a look. Let's
I have a
see.
very specific authenticator question that I'm not sure that you would know the answer to, but I'll ask it anyway. Would you happen to know of a HIPAA compliant authenticator for a healthcare SaaS?
I don't. I wonder if Auth0 and Okta are. Auth0 HIPAA. See, I don't even know what HIPAA is because I can't even spell it.
HIPAA. You know, we'll look that up for you all and answer via email after this.
Yeah, but all of these auth companies should be good, and yeah, definitely check those out. Let's see. Can you consider Strapi as an alternative to WordPress CMS? Yes, you can. There's actually a good. This is a good link to see different types of headless CMSs and what you can use. Strapi is open source. You can install it yourself. So is Ghost and Netlify. There are ones that are hosted, but they probably charge more. It all depends on which one you like. I'm doing a deep dive into a lot of these on Scotch. So I did a dive into Strapi, Ghost, and WordPress. So stick around on scotch.io for those articles because I'm doing a few more. I did Prismic, which is a really good one that is hosted. So you don't really host this yourself, but their pricing is pretty generous. And these all give you an API that you can use. Outsource options to do analysis on your own data. That's actually interesting. I'm not too big on data analytics. I know that Google has like Data Studio. Looker is also one. Domo is one. But as far as like, I feel like all of those are pretty big applications. As far as something simpler, I'm not sure. So let's see, scalability. There's talk about scalability in Strapi. There is going to be another webinar on scalability and building out your apps and kind of performance monitoring. There's a lot that could have gone into this webinar, but we're going to try to focus on certain parts of it in future webinars. So scalability, Strapi handles incoming traffic. I would say that you would have to bring in, you would check your DigitalOcean analytics. Get me into my dashboard, get you into your projects, into your droplet, and then something happened here for our droplet. Did one of you DDoS our droplet? But yeah, so definitely check out these. There's more companies and SaaS apps that you can add for bringing in more performance metrics. Let's see, can you build an app with DigitalOcean? Definitely you can. There's Strapi here. You can have WordPress. You can deploy a node API and directly onto a droplet. Really, DigitalOcean is servers at its core, right? So anything you can put on a server, which is every app you would ever want to build, you can do. Scotch is hosted on DigitalOcean since the beginning, which is awesome. Let's see. Yeah. Sam, do you see any more that?
We are out of time.
All right.
Thank you so much for all your questions. I know that there are so many that we couldn't answer live, but we will hope to answer some of them offline and send them to you afterwards via email. Thank you, Chris, for a great presentation.
Cool. Thanks everybody for joining, and have a good week.